Hello and welcome to St Michael's Chapel for our Dwell service. Whether you're watching this live on Wednesday or at a later time that suits you, welcome. It's really good to join you for this time of reflective worship and prayer today. We gather at this point in the day to remember, to reflect, to listen and to become aware of God's presence with us wherever we are and whatever point in the day you're watching this service. And at our Dwell service, we gather also to breathe in the life that God gives us and in that way to receive God's blessing. So as our worship begins, we take a few moments to become aware of our breathing, to become aware of the breath rising and falling within us, something perhaps that we don't notice most of the time. We perhaps take it for granted because it's always there. But let's take a moment now to become aware of the breath coming in and out of our body. As our breath comes and goes, rises and falls, we become aware perhaps of the way in which it sustains us moment by moment, that it is a gift of God in creation, connecting us to the world around us and also to each part of ourselves, binding together our body, our mind, our spirit. So I invite you to continue to be aware of your breath for the next few moments. And in a moment, I'm going to sound the singing bowl. And as the note fades away, I invite you to follow it for as long as you can until you can't hear it any longer as it fades into silence. And then as the note fades away, we'll keep a few more moments of stillness together. So in this time of stillness, may we move from concerns and busyness to quietness. God of life, God of each breath, God of wonders that will not cease, be present with us now. A few words now about the theme of our Dwell service today. In his commentary on the Psalms, the Old Testament theologian Walter Brueggemann said this: "There can be no doubt that the Psalms are an important resource for spirituality and have been for countless generations. That is indeed why we continue to study them. These words have mediated to persons and communities the presence of God." And today I'm delighted that Paul Smith is here to help us reflect on just two of the themes from the Psalms, those of prayer and praise and of commitment to God. So we'll hear from Paul shortly. Now let us hear our opening prayer. This moment of quiet is an invitation to be calm in the midst of the noise of the world and of our lives, to bring together thought and feeling, mind and spirit, and to find some center, some still point of perspective and peace. We draw near to each other in the presence of the Holy Weaver, that we may see afresh, that we may hear anew, that we may again act with vigour. May there be new patterns woven among us, patterns of peace between strangers, patterns of love between friends, patterns of hope among the hopeless, patterns of joy among the sorrowful. Amen. I'm delighted also that Sarah is here to sing for us today. So we're going to hear now the first of our two worship songs. And the first is "Be Still, for the presence of the Lord, the Holy One, is here."
Shining all around. He burns with holy fire, with splendor he is crowned. How awesome is the sight, our radiant King of light. Be still, for the glory of the Lord is shining all around. Be still, for the power of the Lord is moving in this place. He comes to cleanse and heal, to minister His grace. No one too hard for Him. In faith receive from Him. Be still, for the power of the Lord is moving in this place.
We're now going to hear our first Bible reading and reflection from Paul.
Our first psalm this morning is from Psalm 31. In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me. Come quickly to my rescue. Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, lead and guide me. Keep me free from the trap that is set for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Deliver me, Lord, my faithful God. I hate those who cling to worthless idols. As for me, I trust in the Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in your love, for you saw my affliction and knew the anguish of my soul. You have not given me into the hands of the enemy, but have set my feet in a spacious place. Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish, and my years by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction, and my bones grow weak. Because of all my enemies, I am at the utter contempt of my neighbours, and an object of dread to my closest friends. Those who see me on the street flee from me. I am forgotten as though I were dead. I have become like broken pottery. For I hear many whispering, terror on every side. They conspire against me and plot to take my life. Some verses from Psalm 31. When we say we have faith in God, but do we really trust him? David's words, I entrust my spirit into your hands, convey his complete trust in God. Jesus used this phrase as he was dying on the cross, showing his absolute dependence on God the Father. Stephen repeated these words as he was being stoned to death, confident that in death he was simply passing from God's earthly care to God's eternal care. We should commit our possessions, our family, and our vocations to God. But first and foremost, we should commit ourselves completely to him. Why did David suddenly bring up the subject of idol worship? He wanted to contrast his total devotion to God with the diluted worship offered by many Israelites. Pagan religious rituals were never completely banished from Israel and Judah, despite the efforts of David and a few other kings. Obviously, a person who clings to idols could not commit his spirit into God's hands. When we put today's idols, wealth, material possessions, social media platforms, first in our lives, we cannot expect God's Spirit to guide us. God is our highest authority and requires our first allegiance. In describing his feelings, David wrote of the helplessness and hopelessness everyone feels when hated or rejected. But adversity is easier to accept when we recognize our true relationship with God. Although our enemies may seem to have the upper hand, they are ultimately the helpless and hopeless ones. Those who know God will be victorious in the end. We can have courage today because God will preserve us. And the final verse of Psalm 31, be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. And we'll hear a little bit more from Paul reflecting on the Psalms in a few minutes' time. We're going now to hear our second worship song, and we're going to hear the song, I Will Offer Up My Life.
I will offer up my life in spirit and truth, pouring out the oil of love as my Savior, what can be said? What can be sung as a praise of your name for the things you have done? Oh, my words could not tell, not even in part, of the debt of love that is owed by this thankful heart. You deserve my every breath, for you've paid the great cost, giving up your life to death, even death on a cross. You took all my shame away, there defeated my sin, opened up the gates of heaven, and have beckoned me in. Jesus, what can I give? What can I bring to so faithful a friend, to so loving a King? What can be said? What can be sung as a praise of your name for the things you have done? All my words could not tell, not even in part, of the debt of love that is owed by this thankful heart.
And now let's hear our second Bible reading and reflection with Paul.
Our second psalm this morning is Psalm 67. May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the peoples praise you. May the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you rule the peoples with equity and guide the nations of the earth. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the peoples praise you. The land yield its harvest. God, our God, blesses us. May God bless us still, so that all the ends of the earth will fear him. Psalm 67 is curious. It defies being put into a category and isn't swept up with the other psalms, which makes it unusual. We are more or less creatures of habit, so if you use the psalms regularly, they become familiar both in content and rhythm. So when you get a psalm that evades the standard formula, you wonder what its original purpose was and what it means not only to read that psalm, but to pray it and try to live out its meaning. There is here a blessing, reminding us that all blessings in life have their origin in God. Hearing Psalm 67 sung by a community and perhaps to the accompaniment of stringed instruments would be a rather different experience from the way most of us would experience its message. We would be more accustomed to a solo spoken voice or a choir, or hear our own voice as we read it aloud. However, as experienced, this psalm has a prayerful, not passive tone. The writer implores, "May the peoples praise you," and intersperses requests for the examples of God's goodness and blessings on their life. The repeated call, "May all the peoples praise you," is captivating. It's an instruction. Let's get started, or a directive to permit and not prevent people from praising God. This is the challenge of Psalm 67. Sustained by abundant blessings our praise can mean. All the ends of the earth shall fear him. Fear in the sense of a life-giving, respectful, awesome wonder. No good thing, no good person, nothing and no one overlooked. So just recapping that final verse from Psalm 67. May God bless us still, so that all the ends of the earth will fear him. Amen.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that further reflection. We're going to continue to stay with the Psalms that Paul has brought to us for a few moments of our own reflection. Verse 16 of Psalm 31 says, "Let your face shine on your servant. Save me in your unfailing love." So let us take a few moments of stillness now to become aware of God's love, to reflect on the love that God offers to us, God's freely offered goodness shining down on each one of us. And so now, as we come towards the close of our time together, let us take a few moments to prepare ourselves for the rest of the day that lies ahead of us and see the potential that God offers to us. So let us begin in a moment of quietness by bringing to God the concerns of this day. And now let us bring to God the people of this day. And let us now bring ourselves and our concerns to God. Lord, give us wisdom before we speak, understanding while we listen, sensitivity towards those we meet, and the perspective of your kingdom in which to see the things of earth. Bring us to the day's ending, blessed through having shared this time of prayer. In the name of Christ we ask this. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us in this service. Thank you to Paul and to Sarah for helping us in our worship and enriching our time together. I hope that you have found a place to dwell here today and that you're able to join us again soon. So we now hear the words of our closing prayer. Bless us, God, with saints to tell us stories, with angels to surprise us, and with friends along the way. Bless us, God, with strength and joy and courage, all the length and breadth of our nights and days. Amen.
Amen.